Step into realms where the heart takes flight, where strategy meets the edge of night. The Dungeons, Dragons, and Psychology Podcast. Prepare your mind. Now be our guest.
There is a feeling that nearly every dungeon master runs into. It's a nagging voice that says, I'm not cut out for this, or I don't deserve to run this game, or I'm not very good at this. This is imposter syndrome. And in the D&D community, sometimes it's even related to an interesting phenomenon that people call the Matt Mercer effect. Today, we're going to unpack what that means, why DMs feel it, and what psychology says about it. Most importantly, how to manage it. I'm Robert Walker, author of Session Zero, the DMG to writing great campaigns in any system, and this is my show where I teach collaborative storytellers how to have more immersive campaigns using psychology. And today, we're going to be working on how to build confidence in your storytelling and enjoying the game if you are affected by imposter syndrome. Now, in the gaming world, you've probably heard of this idea, the Matt Mercer effect. Matt Mercer, of course, being the DM of Critical Role and an avid gamer, amazing storyteller who's great with voices and world building and pretty much everything a dungeon master needs to be. Now, the Matt Mercer effect has sort of become known as what happens when people get involved in D&D because they were listening to Matt Mercer run games, and they expect those games to look and sound and even go off the way that Matt Mercer's games do. But that's not really feasible. And for dungeon masters, this effect can even morph into imposter syndrome. So what is that? Imposter syndrome, or imposter phenomenon, is the belief that you're a fraud or you're not good enough despite evidence of success. You might discount your wins. You might say you were just lucky, or you might fear that people are going to find out you're not this great dungeon master. And it's not a rare phenomenon. It's quite common. Studies actually show that it happens across professions and life stages, and it's nothing to do with a lack of ability. It's a thinking pattern. So for DMs, it might show up like this. You might compare yourself or your sessions to polished live streams like Matt Mercer or Brennan Lee Mulligan, hyper-focusing on prep flaws, freezing when you're improvising because you don't think your voices or your world building is good. Why does this happen so often to DMs? Well, first, it's visibility and comparison. When you watch high production streams or listen to them, you start comparing your home games to theater, really. That's what the Matt Mercer effect is. It's when the DM feels pressure to match celebrity DMs. Next, there's the emotional investment behind it all. Being a DM is a creative labor. And when you create something, you care a lot about it. And when you care about something, you have that risk of doubt. And third, it's the all-at-once role. You're a storyteller, a rules arbiter, an improviser, the social moderator. You wear so many different hats as a dungeon master, so there are so many different places where you can feel like you are not good enough at that particular skill. But what does research say? Psychologists tell us that imposter feelings come from personality, the environment, and social expectations. When people really deeply care about their performance, like teachers, leaders, creators, those are the people that are especially prone to having imposter syndrome. And that is the dungeon master in a nutshell. In the a.k.a. and other tools, they suggest things like cognitive reframing or celebrating wins or sharing your feelings with your peers to help mitigate this feeling a little bit. And yes, even therapy if it starts to interfere with your daily life. But it's important to remember that even Matt Mercer has even celebrated dungeon masters admit to having self-doubt. He has spoken out about this feeling of pressure and anxiety and not believing that they should be where they are. So if the person inspiring the Matt Mercer effect also feels this sort of thing, you just have to realize that as a dungeon master that you're not alone. So how might this show up at your table? Let me paint a couple familiar scenes for you. First, you prep for 30 hours for a really special session. You've got everything planned out, and then your players may not be interested in your hook and they end up going off script, so you think you failed. Or you sit there binging Critical Role or Dimension 20 clips, deciding that you need perfect voices and music and props and a big set. And so you start to panic that your gaming table doesn't reflect something that is that professional and that precise in any way, shape, or form, really. Or perhaps you obsess about encounter balance and then your players sort of bypass it and you feel useless that you spent so much time preparing an encounter that was balanced for the entire party. All these imposter patterns are discounting your wins or chasing impossible standards or from comparing yourself to others. This kind of thinking doesn't just hurt you, it really hurts your games. It can cause paralysis. You stop experimenting and your creativity can die off. It can lead to burnout. You might over prep for every session and not have any energy left when you finally get to the game. It can also reduce your player agency. If you lock down control to hide places where you don't feel as strong as a dungeon master, it can make your players feel railroaded. So this chase for perfection can actually make a game worse. But there are some practical tools. So let's look at some of the tactics that you can use right away to deal with this feeling. First, you can reframe the goal. Remember, your job isn't to be perfect, it's to be fun. Fun is going to beat polish and theatrics every step of the way. Like, think of how many big budget films had great special effects and really big actors, but just didn't land right because they didn't have the right feeling, or the writing wasn't very good, or some other aspect of it just made it not be as fun. As a dungeon master, fun is sort of rule zero, right? Everybody's there to have a good time. Next, you can normalize chaos when it comes up. Tell your players up front, I'm going to be improvising this scene tonight because I didn't have anything prepared for it. So if you stumble, it's expected and it's okay. And you can keep a wins log. Now, this is something that maybe not everybody needs to do, but if at the end of every session you wrote down 2 to 3 things that went really well in your game, no matter how small they are, it's going to help you build evidence against your own self-doubt. You can also use pauses. If you freeze, that's fine. Just say, hold on, guys, give me 30 seconds to think this through, or toss the spotlight back. Ask the party what they are trying to accomplish in this room, or have them roll perception checks just to give yourself a moment to think about what they might notice when they see the room. Just take a small break and then come back to it when you're ready. And next, you can lean on player agency. Ask your players to add details into your story. It can ease your pressure and make your world richer. I've mentioned before on the show how sometimes I will ask the players to write NPCs into their backstories, or come up with an NPC that we're going to use in a session that then I will use in whatever creative way I might wish as a DM. But just having them add little pieces like that can take away some of that heavy burden that the dungeon master always has to bear of doing so many things for the world. And finally, you can limit perfectionism. set yourself a cap of how much time you're going to spend prepping. Maybe call it 2 hours in a week. Outline only what the next big thing is for the campaign, not the whole campaign, not the whole next 5-6 sessions. Just what do you expect them to get done in the next session? And maybe 1 or 2 small things that could happen if they don't grab that hook, if they don't follow that way. There are growth tools that we can use to help. One of them is called cognitive reframing. So cognitive reframing, something like if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm not a very good DM. Well, you can reframe this by asking yourself, what's the evidence to the other side of this argument? Or what would the evidence be that I am a good dungeon master? Well, normally for a feeling like that, the evidence is your players are coming back to your game every week. They're laughing around the table. They're having fun. They're thanking you. They're even saying at the end of the session that they had a good time or it was a great session. Next, peer groups. If you share your highlights or your story or your world building or whatever it is with other dungeon masters in all sorts of forums that are available, Facebook groups or on X, or there's so many locations where you can get a hold of other people who are playing this game and talk to them about what issues you're struggling with or what areas you think that you're not doing well, and ask for a positive and a constructive note. Outside eyes can really help you not just combat this feeling, but they can also help you improve. When you see something that you are doing well and others notice it and they give you an idea to improve upon, that can be really helpful as a growth tool. Next, celebrate publicly with your group. When you have a session that goes really well, highlight what it was about it that you really liked. Remind yourself that you did it well and let your players know that you thought it went really well. Get their input on it. Usually they're going to feel the same way. Sometimes I've found even when I think I'm down on something because it didn't go the way I want, I'll pay attention to what the players are saying about it and hear how much fun they're actually having, which sort of reframes what I'm thinking about, which is being down on myself. But why should I be when the point of the game is to have fun and they are clearly having a great time with the way that things went? And next, if you do want to train your skills or get better or grow, just train one skill at a time. You don't have to try and be Matt Mercer tomorrow. Pick a skill that you want to focus on. Like, are you going to work on voices or pacing your combats or improving on the spot? And then just practice that one skill at a time. So you can even set, hey, maybe for the next 3 or 4 sessions, I'm not going to have NPCs ready to go other than maybe names, but I'm going to have to improv their personalities and their voices on the spot. And then I'll write down what I do. Things like that. Just find one skill that you want to fine tune and work on it one at a time. Now, every DM has unique strengths. That is something that is, I think, true throughout the entire gaming world. Some DMs are awesome at world building. Others are great at doing voices. Some DMs are just masters of the rules. And some are just fun. They just have great enthusiasm and the charisma to make everybody enjoy themselves. You don't need to be all of these things. You don't need to look like a polished theatrical troupe. You just need to be you. Imperfection helps create the stories that we tell for years. We say it all the time in gaming that the dice tells the story. Well, if that's true, then you don't have to worry so much as a DM. Have the things you want to happen set and ready to go, but remember, the roll of the dice can change all of that anyways. So don't lean too heavily on beating yourself up or feeling like you don't belong there. If you're a dungeon master, you're a dungeon master. You belong there. Now, let's get on to tricks of the trade. So today, I'm just going to give you a couple practical takeaways that you can use at the table and in life to start rewriting that imposter syndrome narrative. So here are 3 ways that both DMs and players can recognize and reframe imposter thoughts. So, first, you need to recognize the comparison trap and reframe comparison into personal growth. If you catch yourself thinking, I'll never be able to run a game like Matt Mercer or Brennan Lee Mulligan, or that other player role plays so much better than I do, or something along those lines, that's imposter syndrome talking. The reframe then could be, I am not them. I'm supposed to be me. And every game I run and play is a step towards developing my own unique style. Instead of comparing, track your own growth. Notice the small wins, like better pacing or making a fun NPC voice, or a moment that you really connected with another player and had emotional storytelling. Next, recognize that there is the fear of being found out and reframe that into shared creativity. Sometimes imposter syndrome can whisper, if people know how little I know about whatever, they'd see that I don't belong here or that I'm not fit to be a dungeon master. But flip that. Remind yourself that it is a collaborative game. Nobody knows everything, and that's the fun part. As a DM, you don't need to be an encyclopedia. As a player, you don't need to be flawless at roleplay or having a character voice for your character. Everyone brings something unique to the table, and it works because it's a group effort. And finally, recognize perfection pressure when you see it and reframe this into good enough is great. You might think, if I don't prep the perfect world, my players are not going to like it. Or if I don't roleplay flawlessly, I'll ruin the scene. That's the perfection trap. And the reframe, the goal isn't perfection, it's engagement. Players don't remember tiny slip-ups. They remember how you made them feel, the excitement of the moment, and the laughs you share. In other words, good enough. Session, it's better than you think. So don't get caught up in trying to be perfect. And whenever you find that imposter voice piping up, don't just silence it, catch it, name it, reframe it. Because the truth is, you don't need to be perfect to belong at the table. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just a quick reminder to you all that we are trying to get this show to sustain itself and stay on the air. So if you have the ability, you can join us on Patreon and become a supporter of the show. There's also links in the show notes to the Etsy shop I have, Games for Games, where there's all sorts of cool gaming gear, shirts and mugs and mats and all sorts of things. So any way that you can support this show is helpful. And even if you can't do it with any sort of monetary type of support, please remind your friends, let them know about the show. Just get the word out there, because obviously more ears means that there's going to be more support out there. As always, my friends, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next session.